talk about the businesses in Palmyra, which is great. You know, Charlie alluded to that, and he said, you know, in one of his books he talks about the businessmen of Palmyra, but he didn't mention any of the specific persons or whatever. Are they on? Okay, so you can start whenever you're ready.
My name is Mrs Maurer. I reside in North Londonderry Township. I came to Palmyra in 1957 because my husband Ronald had accepted employment from the Cornwall School District.
Why did you choose Palmyra, though? Why didn't you move to the Cornwall Lebanon School?
At that time, Bethlehem Steel was the prominent occupation in Bethlehem Steel, and most of the homes were occupied by the people who were employed by Bethlehem Steel. And we tried to get housing there, but that was such a close community that if a house became vacant, it never made anywhere else but through word of mouth that it was available, and so there just wasn't anything free for us to get into at that time.
And I think you told me when you came to Palmyra, you ended up living in a very historic building that has a story to it.
Yes. When we came here to Palmyra, we were fortunate enough to have an apartment rented in the Greystone Apartments on North College Street, which is now just a vacant lot. It was located across from the present firehouse. And on New Year's Eve in 1962, we had a heavy snow, terribly strong winds, and it caught fire, and it was completely destroyed. The owner of the apartment building was Fred Schneider Sr., and because of the weather conditions, the firefighters couldn't get to him, and so he lost his life in that fire.
Were you living there at the time?
No, we had moved just a year prior to that, and we, as I said, live now in the township in the southwest part of town. But we had relatives that lived in there, and nothing was safe. There wasn't anything that they could salvage.
When people talk about the stories of Palmyra, there are two major fires that took place. One was at the livery stable, and the other one was at Greystone.
And there were 9 apartments in that building.
Oh my goodness!
Yes, there were 9 apartments.
And what I forget, what had it been before? Before it was
a Lutheran church.
Okay.
It was a renovated Lutheran church.
It was the original Lutheran church that later became Palm. Is that right?
I really never heard that, and in all the histories I've read of Palm Lutheran, they never mentioned that.
So it was a separate sect.
It probably was a separate denomination from the Palm. Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, and it's interesting that when you did move from an apartment to a home, you still chose Palmyra, though.
Well, one of the reasons was Palmyra at that time was more of a contained community, and we felt we had 2 young children, and we didn't want them to ride a school bus because he, as I said, had been employed in Cornwall, and all of their students were rural, and so they were on a school bus for hours, you know, every day. And so we decided that if we could find a community that we could live in, and Palmyra was that kind of a community because you had so many opportunities here to shop. That's where the business district was really prosperous at this time. We had Harold Herr was on the square selling GE appliances. Dick Rudy was next door with a beauty barber shop. We had 2 5 and 10s, J.V. Lee and Lurches. We had Pickles Pharmacy on the other side of the street. My children always chuckled because Mr. Pickle had a pharmacy. Ferry's department store, that was owned by Mark and Jean Ferry, supplied almost all of the children in Palmyra with their clothing because they sold, you know, locally. And the clerks in there were people who lived in town. When you walked in, they knew who you were, you knew who they were, and it was more like a social event included with your shopping. And then we had Lauk's news agency and gift store, and Bud Lauk is still in the business of servicing a lot of stores through office supplies. And I know he employed a lot of young boys as newspaper carriers throughout the years. Yes. And then you had the Kreider clothing and shoe store, which was kind of unique because it was one storefront, but it had two different stores. And on the one side was men and boys clothing, and that was owned by Harry Kreider. And then on the other side was shoes, and then that was owned by Ray Kreider. And the shoes actually were manufactured by W.L. Kreider factory here in town. And you could go in there and special order shoes, and they would make them at the factory. And that factory closed in 1988. And at one time, I know that there were, what, 3 shoe factories in town?
At least 3. I think there were 4 at one time, yes.
Yes, so they gave a lot of employment to the people.
Steve, just turn that off. He could cut this out. Just open it up and...
Oh, it's your phone?
It's my phone. Excuse me a minute. Hello? I think I messed up. Turn the whole thing off. I forgot to do that. Sorry. He can edit that, so.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what? The tape's still on. I read a history of the W.L. Kreider shoe factory that was given to me by Donald, who was a descendant. It was very interesting of how W.L. Kreider, who would have been Don Kreider's great-grandfather, started that.
That's another thing you found going through all these histories of Palmyra. There were so many families that continued on from generation to generation to generation. Yes.
So it was a real small town, and I was going to say what would be some of the advantages of raising your children here, and that was one sort of a secure place
right,
as well.
Right. And we always seemed to locate, no matter where we were, near school. And we were never far from what was the elementary school at Railroad Street, which is now Interfaith.
Right.
And we spent a lot of time with the children there playing and got to know the people in town and just became a part of the community with that. And one other business I thought I would mention would be that Mr. Ed Hostetter had also a woman's apparel and shoe store, and originally he was located between the First Congregational Church and Fulton Bank now, yes. And then he later moved here, and so...
Mr. Keeney was in business with him?
Yes.
Mr. Keeney was in business with him there, and then...
moved here. And so, yes, there was almost everything available here that most people would need, unless you wanted something special. Then you drove maybe to Lebanon. But people at that time didn't hop in their cars and drive to another town to shop. And shopping malls were not even heard of.
No, that's right, that's right.
Yes.
What about grocery stores?
On North Railroad Street, we had 2 lovely grocery stores, an A&P, and there was a small gentleman in there whose first name was Ben. I didn't know his last name. And if you went into the A&P and you said to him, Ben, I want a good cantaloupe, he'd pick one out for you, and that was that. And across the street from the A&P was Branch Green Grocery. And that really was something that promoted a lot of local crops. Mr. Brand had a grocery store and a meat market, and in the front of his store, when the weather permitted, he would have, well, it would be almost like a small farmer's market with local crops.
Oh, that's interesting, because now Palmyra has a farmer's market. They're trying, it's like what goes around comes around, because they're trying to bring that concept back.
And of course, Jean Stauffer, who I'm sure you have gotten to know, was a Brant girl, and she and Bud both worked in the store for her father.
I forgot that, but you're absolutely right.
Yes, yes. And then when we were here a few years and people started to really come to this area because they liked the location. We were close to a lot of the cities without actually being in the cities. That's when the spurt for the schools started, that they had to enlarge and think about all these new people, families moving in with young children. I always felt it was a community where people who had young children wanted to live because of the proximity to where they were to other things, and just the advantages that it was just living in a small community. Yeah. As
the town grew and your children got older, and did they stay in Palmyra? Or did
yes, they went their 12 years of school through Palmyra. Our daughter, whose name is Kathy, graduated from Juniata, and she's now a school teacher. And our son Brian, he spent some years in the Coast Guard and decided through their training that he would go into the medical field. So he's a pediatrician up in Enfield, Connecticut.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, once they were out of the Palmyra area, you became active in some of the organizations in North, didn't you?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I employed some of the years that they were in school. And so I really felt while I was employed, I couldn't become active because most of the things that I wanted to become active in met in the daytime. And it was just something that you couldn't really give your whole worth to. So after I retired, one of the co-owners of the Palmyra Garden Club said to me, you have to join the garden club. We need some people and I know you'd love it. So I did, and that person was Evelyn Jennings, and who was one of the co-founders. So I did join, and I will say that when you walk through the door, they'll give you a gracious greeting and make you feel very comfortable, and before long you're willing to volunteer.
Great. Well, the Palmyra Garden Club has done some wonderful things to beautify the whole Palmyra area. Do you want to talk about some of those projects?
Okay. Well, over the years, we have, of course, renovated the square. Okay. We have done plantings at the Southeast Park at one point. Now, that's the field that's behind the Sycamore Street on the east end of town. There's a big park there. And you don't know that? Yes, we've had done projects there. We've done some plantings by the pool. And
this year, weren't you involved in that big tree planting? Was the garden club involved with that tree planting?
Well, actually, that was an independent group. Yes, but we always plant all the beds around the municipal building, both front and back, and maintain those. And as our membership is getting older, we really are not looking for a larger area to maintain. We just want to keep those that we have.
Oh, that's still a lot of spaces to take care of.
Right. Well, the thing about it is, once you plant the flowers, you can't forget about them.
No, that's when the work starts.
Right. Right. But all of us who are in the club enjoy it. We do have very interesting meetings once a month. And as I say to the people who I meet and invite them, we do always eat before we meet. So.
That's the fun part of the meeting. Well, and you have at least one show or jury show. Right?
Yes, we have an annual flower show, which is usually held the second Friday of September of every year in the municipal building. And those are specimens brought in by the members of the club, and the judges who come to judge, it is a judge show, are always very anxious to come as a judge. Yes.
They know you get some very good specimens.
Right.
Well, I think that's where I met you, and I was very impressed with the first show that I had been to in Palmyra, and I was very impressed.
Yes. So, no, we hope to be around for 25 more years at least.
Great.
Yes.
Are you getting new members?
Yes, we are, because it seems like that things kind of take a circle. Now I think you're finding more at-home moms because they can work from home. Okay, so if they can work from home, they have 2 hours or 3 hours that they can leave, and it still doesn't interfere with their employment. Yes, so we are getting some new ones, not as rapidly as we'd like, but time, will.
That's exciting because, the story that we've heard is some things like the Lions Club or the Rotary or some of the other clubs are not getting new members, and they had their heyday in the past 50 years, say, but today it's not part of that. So I'm glad to hear the Garden Club is alive and well and prospering. That's great.
Yes,
great.
We're very happy.
Anything else that you want to tell us about? I know you put some real thought into this. But.
Well, I think we should, if no one else has, tell about our great library.
Oh, good idea. Excellent, excellent.
Because we have one of the finest libraries that I have ever come across. And that's another thing, in all the communities we live, we took advantage of all the libraries, yes. Carla Marcella is the director. She does a fantastic job. Just a statistic that I want to be sure I'm getting right is, in their summer program, which is story time, activity time, they had 1,500 children participate last summer.
Oh, that is wonderful.
Isn't that?
Well, that's an organization in town that's certainly thriving.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And the girls who work there are so informative, and they're willing to help. And with the opening up of having computers, you go in there, and it is always full of people, always. And the little ones just love to go, and they love to have them.
Right. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for mentioning that, because no one else has really mentioned the library, so that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share with us?
No, I think that probably covers it all.
Well, thank you so much, because you gave us a very good description of the businesses that I know I grew up with, and that really were right here in the center of Palmyra, so we appreciate that. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for asking me.
You're welcome. Okay. Hey, it wasn't painful, was it?
No.